Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm today I have Sergej. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about
How are you
art.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Today we're going to talk about art, but not just any art. We're talking about AI art. Because I guess it's a thing that people talked about like a couple of weeks ago, and so now we're talking about it finally.
I don't think it was a couple of weeks ago. It feels like months at this point.
I mean, to be fair,
maybe even years.
I feel like certain communities around AI art are still growing a lot, so it's still very much in the public eye, and also, even if it wasn't, I think it's still an interesting topic, right? So, AI art, I think we want to specifically talk about the ethics of AI art, which I guess is the biggest topic around it. I mean, we can definitely talk about other things, but I mean, everything I've written was kind of about the ethics. Although, to be fair, I haven't written that many either. But I feel like that's what people tend to talk about, right? It's the, like, what does it do to artists and that sort of thing. I mean, obviously the other thing that people talk about is how many fingers does a hand have, but, you know, working on it.
Yeah.
I was looking at the Stable Diffusion subreddit for a while, and there were so many memes just about how it keeps fucking up hands. And yeah, no, I mean, the bit that I
so
play
bad.
with it, hands
like
and
really.
faces are like not that good.
So I just opted to not have them in frame.
Oh, the hands, yeah.
When I make images, yeah.
I've seen a lot of...
It's so bad.
I've seen a lot of the posts of where people post, like, when they got really good results from one of those AI art programs. And a lot of them do have, like, framing where there are no hands in frame. And I'm like, I wonder
it's intentional.
That is. And then I've seen some where, like, it looks really good until you start looking at the hands and you're like, wait, they have way too many fingers.
Yeah. Or it's just like a jumbled mess.
Yeah, that too.
Just finger-shaped shapes, I guess.
I think in our terms we call those fingers.
Yeah, but... Perhaps. Alright. How do we transition now?
Well, let's talk about, I guess the first... I guess the big question always is, like, what is sort of the main ethics of it, right? Like, is this gonna hurt artists, and does that matter? You know, those sort of questions I think are probably the primary point that people will make, right? Like, there are artists that have, like, worked years to perfect their craft, and now you're trying to get them out of business by automating it, and I find that an interesting argument because, like, it's a little different with art, I think, but in the grand scheme of things, that same argument has been made whenever any kind of automation is invented, right? Oh, we can now automate this process. Imagine how many workers that were previously hand producing this are going to be put out of business. It's like, yeah, so what? And, like, why is it any different? I mean, obviously, I say so what. I know there was a lot of resistance against different types of automation, but at the end of the day, either the industry shift or we have to eventually, maybe, hopefully at some point, just move away from the assumptions that labor is a necessary part of life. But
yeah,
I don't see why it would matter that much more about art, because it still is the same fundamental idea, right? Because it's still like, oh yeah, you're taking someone's work away, but it's automation, right? Automation takes jobs away. That's just what it does. And I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. I don't know, what's your take on this?
Thing is, like, usually automation also creates new jobs.
Yes, and so does this.
I don't see how AI art creates enough jobs to, like, catch all the people that lose the jobs.
I mean, that's fair.
Or, like, nearly enough.
So, I mean, obviously, we've already seen people trying to, like, sell very specific prompts because certain models are, like, a bit picky about how they take their prompts. And I've already seen people thinking about offering services like using the image-to-image generation to like make a quick sketch, have the AI render some images, pick out the best one, do some maybe by hand some spot fixes where it didn't quite work out right. Maybe artists will specialize in drawing hands. I don't know. I'm sure the AI will get better at it, but it's like that. No, but like seriously, right? If your picture that's generally is perfect, except that the hands are weird, you kind of got two solutions, right? You can try to use something like infill, which is when you have the AI kind of redraw elements of the image and try to get that to draw you a good hand, or you just let a human do the same thing effectively, right? And so, I think so. Text-based prompts, or you can also use an image to generate that, as I said, and that I think is also one element where it's like I've seen
a combination of both.
Literally, just I mean, usually yes. I've seen people just literally block it out, effectively just draw some vague shapes, and those work pretty well. I literally was like someone drew like a horizon line, some clouds, and a little bit of filled out the ground, and like drew like two like big lines on it for where the people were supposed to be standing, and that worked. So it definitely doesn't have to be particularly.
It's crazy what AI can do.
But I do think there are still some jobs in that sense where like you can still have some artists that like specialize in working with these new tools, right? That's always a thing. Just because a job becomes easier doesn't mean that everyone can suddenly do it, right? So I've played around with it a little bit, and I certainly haven't played around with it enough to where I would have any skill at it. But also, again, right, that's kind of the point. You can't just like be like, oh, I need some illustrations. Let's just pick up, like, I don't know, let's download like a Stable Diffusion and just run it on my computer and like type in some prompts. You're not going to get anything that good, like, just like that. And so...
Yeah, you still have to put work in it.
So I think...
Like, I generated like 2 images so far that I'm happy with. And each one took like about 4 hours-ish.
Yeah.
Of like working on it. Like changing prompts, infilling, manual fix-ups, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that is still a job at the end of the day, right? And on the other hand, you have the sort of programmer side of it, right? Because you want people who refine the refine the algorithms, not really, right? It's an AI, but still, right? AI creation is still not exactly something that just happens. There's still people working on that. There is still work being done on various things. I think Stable Diffusion is on 2.0 at the moment. I think there was, what is it called, Midjourney, that is at version 4 at the moment, right? So like there are still like improvements being made upon these things, and they are refining training models, and I mean obviously there are custom training models as well, but it's that sort of thing where it's not like it's a finished product that's never going to change again. So I think there's still also some work on that side. And then yes, I mean obviously this is not going to fully fill out all of the jobs, but I think that's to some degree always been the case with automation, right? It's like, oh yeah, if you invent the conveyor, like a conveyor system for working on, right? That's not the correct terminology, is it? Anyways, you all of a sudden you have much fewer factory workers, right? Because assembly lines, right? That's what I was getting at. You have assembly lines, and it takes a lot fewer workers to put them together on an assembly line than it does to do it all by hand. I mean, it's still kind of by hand, but it's also not entirely.
I guess, yeah.
And then sometimes you have like robot arms that do like some parts of it that are like not as finicky, maybe. And so then obviously you need people to build and refine the assembly line stuff, but it still is fewer people than were needed in that exact job before, right? Tractors allow farmers to like have way bigger fields than they used to before, and so one single farmer can produce a lot more produce in the same amount of time than they could before. And so the idea that jobs kind of disappear is not new. I do wonder if at some point, we talked about this before, right? With the way technology is going, if at some point our current assumption that everyone works for money and then that money gets spent to live remains sustainable. And I'm not sure that it will, because at some point we have so much automation that there just isn't that much novel stuff to do, and I think that's fine, right? We just have to figure out a new system in which it works better. And so you get into ideas like UBI, right, a universal basic income, and stuff like that, where I think we're a bit out from that being absolutely necessary, but I think it still is something to look into. I mean, obviously there are some pilot programs, but I think artists losing their jobs is probably not our biggest concern when it comes to automation. So we don't necessarily have to talk about that right now because I've talked about it before, and that's probably the main thing.
All right, so then I have a question for you. How about like AI that generates code? Like GitHub's Copilot and stuff like that.
I mean, it's the same idea, right?
What do you think there?
It's the same idea, right? I mean, obviously, it's unfortunate, as it were, if you like trained years to be an artist. It's just unfortunate if you trained for years to be a programmer, and all of a sudden those jobs start disappearing. But that has happened in every industry, basically. I mean, some industries more so than others, but jobs disappearing is just a thing. And then oftentimes, as I said, new jobs do appear. Sometimes they don't, and that's just what progress looks like, though. So I think AI is just one of those things, or machine learning, because before people say, "Oh, it's not true AI," because people always say that. Have you ever noticed about it's like
no, it is AI, but like a Pong AI is also an AI.
Yeah, it's that thing where like someone
that's
like,
the thing.
This is it's not an AI. It's just a computer doing an algorithm. That's like, oh, it's not an AI. It's machine learning. And it's like, some people just really don't like the term AI because I was like, well, technically AI is more advanced than what we're currently. I was like, shut up.
No, AI is like really, really simple stuff.
But
anyway, not the point of this.
But these machine learning models, I guess it's still probably a better term to use because it is more specific. These are starting to just become a part of the world, right? And it's a genie you can't put back into the bottle, as it were, right? Like, the technology is there, people are going to use it. The world is going to adapt.
That's true.
Like, this is inevitable. And on some level, I mean, obviously, we can still talk about a lot of the ethics involved with this because it's not just, like, should it exist or not. But at some point, like, it is unavoidable. And so even if it were unethical, which I don't think it is, then, like, at least it existing. I mean, there are certain ethical things you can do with it, but I think the technology itself is not necessarily unethical. But even if it were, big whoop, right? We can't really do much about it.
Yes. So I still have like 2 points that I kind of want to bring up. One of them is related to the programming AI, in that, like, you need to describe what you want really, really well, which not a lot of people can.
That is going to be a more important skill set in the years to come.
Yes. And even if you do, you're absolutely not guaranteed any results that make you happy.
Yeah.
Which is another thing.
And I think it's one of those things, again, where I think good programmers will be able to use the code-generating AIs to write better code or to write code more quickly, but I think their programming skills will still come in handy, right? First of all, you need to, the more precisely you can describe the code, the more likely it is to produce something like what you want. And then, if there are elements of it that aren't very good, you might just consider just rewriting it by hand, if it's like a small enough segment, because it's going to be easier than trying to get it to generate the exact correct code. And it's the exact same thing with art, right? As I said, where if I try to generate an AI image and there's something about it that I don't like, I have to like try to use some like the infill tools to try to fix it, because I'm not going to be able to fix it by drawing over it, because I cannot draw for shit, right? I could learn it, sure, it's a skill. Anyone can in theory learn it. Some people might have a harder time with it than others. It's learnable, but I just don't have that skill, and I'm not interested enough in it to where I would develop that skill. So there is still room for those artists, because where they step in to fill the gaps of where the machinery just doesn't do the best job is where they will then still be able to be quicker with generating an AI image than a non-artist would be, because A, a non-artist will have to do everything with the AI, and B, a non-artist will probably have a tougher time describing what exactly they want in certain ways. Maybe not in terms of content, because obviously that is still, I think, a more general thing, like being able to describe the content well, but a lot of stuff like composition and style and like, oh, make it look like it's using this brush or stuff like that, where it's like, I don't know what different brushes look like on canvas,
yes.
Right? I don't know what different canvas materials do to your art. I don't know what a Renaissance painting looks like, because every time something is tagged as accidental Renaissance, it's actually more Baroque. I've heard, right? It's like, like I don't know my art history.
No clue.
And it's that thing, right? I've seen people also talk about prompts where it's like, oh yeah, like photography, like this and that lens. And I'm like, I don't know anything about photography, right? And so, I mean, you would, but that's kind of the thing, right? Where those skills still to some degree transfer over, not fully, and in some cases, especially with photography, like if you can't actually photograph the real thing, it might just be easier than trying to get the AI to do it. But yeah, I think there's still either way room for people that are in that field. But as I said, like if a good programmer can write code quicker with the AI, like writing the skeleton and stuff like that, and if an artist can make art quicker because they just have to do like a rough sketch and then some spot fixes rather than drawing a full painting, that will inevitably mean that some artists will have a higher output, and then anyone who doesn't adopt the technology inevitably falls short. The value of art probably, of this type of art, right, probably goes down. And so you have to have that higher throughput to really be sustainable. And that's just kind of how it is. I will say there's two different kinds of art that I was thinking about. So the very first time I heard it, I had a very different take on it, right, in terms of the like losing jobs thing, because I was thinking about like art galleries and museums and stuff like that. And oftentimes that's
totally not the art we're talking about. Like, I don't think any AI generated art in the near future will get into any art galleries, except maybe as a novelty.
I was about to say,
best.
I'm pretty sure there will be some, especially like once the AI start becoming really good, there will probably be somewhere they're like, hey, this is like a cutting edge thing that we have. But then once the novelty wears off, it probably won't be. Which is what I was going to say, right? These sort of environments are a lot more oftentimes about name recognition than they are about actual artistic sort of like quality, right? Because I've seen some really silly things that were like touted as high art in part because they were done by like a big name artist. I remember there was one story where someone gave an artist a bunch of money in like, I don't know, $10 bills or something. It was like, and they were supposed to like incorporate that somewhat into the art. And the guy ended up hanging up an empty frame. And it was something about like, and then gave the painting like a name about someone about like greed or something. And he just pocketed the money, right? And that one did definitely have mixed reactions. But some people were like, how that was great art, how there was some social commentary and whatnot. It's like, if I did that, no one would say that because I don't have the cred to back it up to where like I could have done something good with it. I just chose not to, right? So that just doesn't work if you aren't already a well-known artist. And so I think that kind of art
also like on the topic of silly things, the banana tape incident.
I don't know what exactly you mean with the incident, but does it have something to do with the copyright suit? Because like some guy did it first.
I don't know. Like I only heard that like a random guy just taped a banana to a wall in like a museum, and that got sold for like a lot of money or something.
I don't know if that story is necessarily true, because I know there was an actual artist that also did that as part of an exhibition that taped a banana to a wall. And that guy actually got sued
then might be that.
by another artist who had previously taped a banana and an apple, I think, to a wall, and was like, hey, you are just copying my piece of art. And, you know, there was some minor differences, and they were like, hey, it's not similar enough. Like, knock it off.
Yeah, still, it's kind of silly. Yeah. But
yeah, I think we're more sort of talking about illustrators rather than like the sort of like high art artists, right? We're talking about comic books, we're talking about cover illustrations for novels, we're talking about tabletop role-playing games, and have a lot of illustration. We're talking about card games, you know, that sort of thing. I think is what we're like primarily talking about when we're talking about, you know, artists' job getting really replaced. And those artists are still very much artists, but they are also in a way not artists in the same sense as those in the galleries, right? Where they don't make that art for the art's sake, right? It's more so like, you know, it's a contract work, right? It's a work for hire. They get a prompt and they draw it, right? And that's the exact same thing that the AI does, coincidentally, probably not coincidentally. And so
yeah,
that is just a job, right? And those people, some of them will also make some more ambitious art on top of that, right? And some of them do get into galleries and stuff like that. And it's like, you can still do that. You just aren't going to get as much work done in the sort of traditional illustrating space if some of that gets replaced by AI art. And I don't think it's a bad thing. And also, and actually, I'm going to let you talk before I get into my next point, because I feel like I already cut you off a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of already mostly told the second point I had, is that like which kind of art is going to be replaced, or like I don't think like completely replaced is the correct word, but like
supplemented,
yeah, rather, because you still have to have at least some skill, not necessarily in like actually drawing the art, but like more so in editing. But again, you already touched on that. Having art skill learned is like a huge benefit. And yeah, sketches are a thing. Also low priority requests, like, can you draw me this profile picture or something like that?
Yeah,
those kinds of requests, like you can just hammer them out really quickly.
Yeah, that's true.
With a couple minor touch-ups, and I think most people will be happy with that.
Yeah, and in that same vein, I was thinking, right, for some of those simpler things, it does really help that I as I said, like, if I looked a bit into it, I could probably do some pretty good things with it. I know you've done some pretty good things. You showed me one image that you made, which looked really good, and it's like, if I wanted, for example, I mentioned tabletop role-playing games earlier, right? If I wanted to make like a D&D homebrew thing, right, and sell it on DM's Guild, I could do that, but
yeah,
most people do fill them out with artwork that is relevant to what they're selling, not just the stats and the text. And I thought about that stuff before, right? I don't have anything that is like ready to publish content-wise, but I thought, like, I would have to get some art for it, right? And either you find something that's public domain, which people have done as well, or you'd have to actually like pay someone to license their art. And now I could just make my own.
Yep.
And so I think there is something to be said about the accessibility of it, right? Where people that maybe aren't first and foremost artists, but they do need art for something and maybe don't have the money to pay someone to like commission artwork, could still get some reasonably high quality artwork, but just making it themselves. Or in some cases, maybe you commission someone to like do the entire book for the price it would previously cost you to get just one image, because they can just make them a lot quicker. So I think there is an argument to be made here that whenever technology advances like this, that makes things more accessible. And while art is maybe not something that you need as much, right? Like, whenever we set up our food production, made food more accessible, which is like really good because that means fewer people starve, at least in theory. And art is not as important, but I think there are still a lot of people that might want to do like smaller things with their art that could profit from it, right? Like, if I wanted to have a YouTube banner, or if I wanted to, publish like a DM's Guild thing, as I said, it's like, I'm not going to live off of making any of that. Maybe I could if I wanted to like illustrate a book or something, or a comic. But those are certainly avenues that people have that wouldn't have previously had them, right? I mean, technically, I could maybe learn to draw and then make a comic book and then publish it. But now I don't have to learn to draw. I just have to learn how to use the software, which is probably a lot quicker. And even if I did learn to draw, it would still take me longer to draw the images than it would to generate them once I've learned how to use the software properly. As you said, right, you took 4 hours to make the images look good, which is... I have seen people that could probably make something of a comparable quality but just hand drawing it in 4 hours. But, like, also not everyone, right? Like, even of professional artists, a lot of them do take like days and days to make something like that. And if we assume
but at that point, it'll probably be much better.
Yeah, and also, like, you said you spent 4 hours on per image, right? But these were the first ones you've made. I'm assuming you're going to get quicker at it if you were to do this more.
I doubt it. Like, most of it is actually just waiting on the AI to generate different versions of the image.
Fair enough, but that is going to go...
Then, like, if I don't get, like, the result I want in, like, I don't know, like half an hour, just, like, changing the prompt, doing something differently.
Yeah, but...
Maybe manually fixing it up a bit and trying it again, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, some of that...
So I don't think you can really speed it up that much.
Some of that comes with experience, right? Like knowing what is worth trying to get the AI to fix versus what you might want to try to fix by hand, which kinds of prompts work the best, like those sort of things you can improve a little bit on. And then the other thing is that inevitably you're going to eventually upgrade your computer again, and you're going to get a better graphics card, and it's going to generate images faster, right? Whereas a lot of professional artists are probably about as fast as they can get without losing quality. So that is also worth keeping in mind.
Yes.
And like I've tried Stable Diffusion. I downloaded it, right? Like I've generated 2 images thus far. I wasn't particularly happy with either of them, but just to like play around with it and test it, and it's like it takes like 1 or 2 minutes to generate 1 image for me, right? So it's like, I mean,
yeah.
Like, if I wanted an image for something, like, sure, right, I could spend some time on it, but just the novelty of it is almost not worth it because of just how long it takes. And that is, I think, something to keep in mind here. I mean, obviously, there are also, like, web versions, and those certainly were quicker. Although, lately, I've tried the web version today again, and, like, all of them were like, hey, we're currently busy, try again later. So it almost seems like either I hit a time where just wasn't a lot of usage, or like interest is actually still rising. But yeah, so there are limits to that. But yeah, no, I do think there are some good things you could do with it. And again, just getting quicker in part is just computational power, which is an interesting element.
Do you perhaps want to showcase like my D&D character token I generated?
I could do that, yes.
Would that be a thing that's possibly interesting?
I don't know how interesting it is. I can show it, though. Let me open Discord in my browser really quickly so that I can... let me just mute that, just in case it starts to make some noise. Because obviously I can't open...
That would be like one example of like an image you can generate. This in particular took me like 4 hours, like I said.
I'm gonna...
Probably the full version, not the...
That's what I was thinking as well.
Actual token.
This is the full piece of art. Well, it's not quite the full piece of art because... There we are. This is the full piece of art. And then this is the token, which I don't think... did you also make the ring around it with the AI, or did you just make it with like a regular token maker or like...
No.
Or something?
I made it myself. I took a texture and did the rest.
I do actually have a token maker thing. Literally just...
Great.
Why was there a Discord noise? I swear I muted Discord.
Wait, that wasn't the Discord noise, was it?
What else was it? Oh, was it? Was it another service? I thought it was a... I got a message of some sort.
Kind of sounds like Telegram or something.
Oh, it was Telegram. Well, then
anyway,
it might Telegram. Be. Yeah, I got a Telegram message. Someone that I don't even know joined Telegram. Great. That's a fun
nice
thing. So
thanks for interrupting.
That was Telegram.
Anyway, I tried like a couple
I got a message, right?
Token generators thingies. Yeah.
So by the way, the story, I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but like, you know why I sometimes get told that random people join Telegram that I don't even know?
Yes.
So
because it's registered on Joe's phone number.
No, it's my phone number. It's just
actually not the phone number on Joe's phone, rather.
Yeah,
right?
I initially when I first got Telegram, we just installed it on his phone. He already had it installed, so you just had to enter my number. I get an SMS, enter the code, and then I could install it on my PC because it doesn't allow you to install it on your PC without having first installed it on a phone. It doesn't have to be the phone that the number is connected to. It just has to be a phone. And so
Which is kind of dumb.
When it is installed on the phone, it synchronizes the phone contacts with your account contacts, independently of whether the phone that you're on is the one that you actually that's associated with the phone number that you're using. So now every time someone that my buddy Joe knows gets Telegram for the first time, I get a message on Telegram that, hey, this person is on Telegram, and I'm like, you don't know who that is. So that's fun. So now I also won't get out the Telegram notes because now we talked about it like a bunch.
You can still cut it out, this whole thing. But yeah, anyway, like I tried like a couple different token generators thingies for the border and stuff, but didn't like any of them. So I made my own. And so that is also like where editing skills come in handy.
I mean,
it's like a really basic one, but still.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can manage to have like, 2 layers and have like at the top layer be the frame, and then just like you could literally just, I don't know how you exactly did it, but you can literally just use the eraser tool to like erase out the edges of the bottom layer. Because you don't have to be very precise because you just have to
it's anywhere a couple more layers. It's a couple more layers.
I mean, there's probably some fancy ways to do it, but like I could have done it the primitive way, which would have worked.
Yeah.
No, but like
because I didn't want to just have like the ring texture. I added like shadows and specular highlights and stuff like that to make it a bit fancier.
It does have some shadow around the top, at the very least it wasn't there before. So
yeah.
I just used someone made a token maker tool at some point that I downloaded because I'm just like, hey, this comes with token frames, some of which I do quite like. And also it's just like, oh yeah, just drop the image in there, like drag and drop, resize a little bit, and just print out, and it just makes the file without you having to like actually like play around with Photoshop or whatever. Well, I don't have Photoshop, but play around with GIMP or whatever. I just can just make it. So it's just
yeah,
it's faster, and I'm lazy.
So yeah, like also I would like probably never have commissioned art for like a D&D character token.
Yeah, it had occurred to me.
Like even if it was like just $5.
It had occurred to me.
It's just not worth it. For me.
I was like, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? And I had thought about it at one point, but it's like, no, I don't want to do it, right? Because I'm just too stingy for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still might want to actually also do the thing that you did, where I try to actually generate some artwork. One of the things that I did try once I downloaded Stable Diffusion was actually trying to generate a character that could maybe sort of serve as a basis for a new token. I'm probably not going to make anything anytime soon, but I actually have one idea that I want to try, and that is, how we have a player in our group that does sketches sometimes, right? And he's done at least one sketch of my character. I think, as a matter of fact, he did the group shot, and then he also, in a birthday card they gave me, he also had like a small drawing of my character. And so I want to scan that in, and I want to see if I can use that for image to image.
Oh, that might actually work.
I was thinking
that might actually work.
Given how rough some of the sketches were that I've seen people do great things with an image to image, this one should comparatively be really good. I mean, in theory, like if I had any sort of artistic talent, I could literally just like trace the outline in a photo in like a image editing software, and then just like shade it in the colors, right? Like that is still. I mean, could probably literally just like do that and then like block it in and then make some shadows and stuff, and it will probably not look terrible, but just.
You probably don't even need to do shadows. Like the AI will do that for you.
I mean, no. I was saying, like, if I wanted to, like, actually just do it without the AI, then I could, like, block in colors and like do some shadows, and it would probably still look okay. The problem is that usually you don't want to have segments having a solid color. So yeah. But again, right? It's like I do want to play around with it a little bit more, but I definitely already see some limits to just how much I could do with it without either getting really into it or spending a lot of time with it, which I guess kind of correlates, but also just in general, like the fact that it takes me, like I had it set to batch size one batch, right? And it still takes like a minute or two to just make the one image, and it's like, oh, great.
I mean, for me, it's a bit better with like, I think I can generate 20 variants in, I think it was like 5 to 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean,
it still takes a while.
I was considering getting a new graphics card anyways.
Don't buy the 40 series.
Yeah.
Please. Don't burn your house down.
I mean, that I think that's just the 4090. I think the 4080 does have two 8-pin connectors, but
okay, then that's all right.
Also, the 4080 apparently is better than the 3090, but that's the point. I think it still doesn't. I think price was. I would probably still buy a 30 series or even the 20 series card. Most likely, maybe see if I can get like a.
I don't think 20 series is worth it. But we were way off topic. Let's move on.
Well, do we have anything else to say about artificial intelligence art? Because I feel like I said a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say. Maybe all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you covered all 4 of my points.
I definitely think it's something
that I've written down.
Worth looking at least into for people that are interested in it. At least play around with it a little bit. I would actually recommend that if you do want to play around with it a bit more, you probably would want to download some sort of computer, like local version. Assuming you have a graphics card, and at least, 4 gigabytes of VRAM, I think is sort of the recommended lowest minimum.
Yeah. Like it technically works at like 2 gigabytes, but it's probably really painful to do.
And, yeah, just play around with it a little bit. I know the one that you used, that you showed me, that like is fairly user friendly. Though I know that the installation is going to be a lot for some people. So, I mean, the installation is just git clone,
yes.
But that is going to be a lot for some people.
Not quite. Like, I actually had to do a bit more tinkering, like install CUDA drivers, get the correct version of Python.
I mean, yeah, it says install Python, install Git, and then run git clone, insert a model, and then start the thing.
Because apparently, the newest version of Python doesn't work. Like 3.11 doesn't work, but 3.10 does.
3.10.6. It said it very precisely in the installation instructions. If you had read them, you would know that. I literally was on the Python page and like, there are newer versions. I'm like, nope, let's just get the exact one that they said.
I ended up installing 3.11 and 3.10.8. The long-term supported one.
Yeah, I was like, does it matter which 3.10? I'm like, you know what? If they say 3.10.6, I'm just gonna install it. Like, I've never used Python for anything, right? Like, I like, it's not like I had a version of Python lying around, right? When someone uses Java, I'm like, hey, let's check all the Java versions that I have installed and see what that does. It's like, no Python. Yeah. But yeah, so I already had Git, so I didn't have to install Git. That's a plus.
You don't even have to install Git. You can download a zip in GitHub itself. Like that's an option.
Okay, I mean, you
can do that.
The installation instructions were like, hey, just use git clone. And I was like, I got Git. Let's git clone. So cloned.
Yeah.
It worked. I swear to God, it's very useful to have the Linux subsystem. It's very cool. Because
it's so good.
People have so many complaints about Git for Windows. Like, it's not even real. Like, there are like actual like Git clients for Windows, because I don't think that's like a command line version. And apparently they all have some sort of issue.
There is.
Okay. Yeah, that's just like, bash, Git, done. Like, I swear to God, every time almost every time I open the command prompt, the first thing I type in is just bash. And because, like, I'm using the Linux command prompt more than the Windows one, despite the fact that I'm a Windows user.
So yeah, I just open bash directly.
I know you can do that,
but again, I was just not the topic.
Yeah, I always just go cmd bash. Also, it's always fun to just type exit 4 times whenever you're done. Like I have had that before, where it's like, I think it was 4 times.
Control D.
I mean, I know there are ways. That's I liked the idea of typing exit a bunch of times. Okay, like let me have my fun. So yeah, what's the fact of the week?
Fair. My fact of the week is about SI metric prefixes. I think one of the words was unnecessary. So last week on Friday, on the November 18th, they added 2 new prefixes.
Are they like...
Or rather 4, actually.
Are they like at the top end? Because like whatever peta... They're probably still already some above that.
Iota.
Too small. Yeah.
Iota was...
Too small?
Yes. Iota was too small. They added Ronna above Iota and Quetta above Ronna. As well as on the lower scale, under Yocto, they added Ronto, and under Ronto they added Quecto.
I don't know about some of these, but okay.
So yeah, this is the first time in over 30 years that new SI prefixes were added. Which is pretty cool.
I mean, yeah, sure, whatever. I know it's a good idea. I do think it's a good idea to have them just in case. Because obviously, at some point when you're talking about really big numbers, I feel like you start automatically going to the times 10 to the whatever, rather than actually like naming the number. But also, I know, for example, in computer storage, right, we're talking about, petabytes more and more often these days. And so...
Yeah, it's crazy.
It does make sense that you would still want to have the numbers for it rather than... Because it always does feel a bit silly if you end up talking about like, oh yeah, it's... I don't know, what was it? Kilo would be 10 to the 3, mega 6, gigas 9, tera is 12.
That is 10 to the 15.
I got there. So yeah, saying like, oh yeah, this is like 10 to the 15th bytes. Yeah, I don't know. That does sound weird. Like in scientific usage, I think it's not as weird, especially because oftentimes you will use those things and formulas where you will have to like end up multiplying numbers together anyways, and so multiplying the powers together obviously is very easy. 10 to the n times 10 to the m equals 10 to the n plus m, as it were. And so yeah. I said as if n and m would have to be natural numbers, but this technically works for any numbers, but obviously you don't really use non-natural numbers as exponents usually.
Usually.
Except for when you do.
Unless you know what you're doing.
Well, I mean, yeah. There are other things where you could do negative numbers would technically be non-natural, which does actually happen quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And then fractions are roots, so if you have 2 to the half, it's equal to the square root. If you have 2 to the third, it's equal to a cube root. So, like, those can still make sense in some cases, but obviously, when we're talking about powers of 10, we're generally just talking about positive and negative numbers. Whole numbers, if you will. That is an interesting fact. I had not heard of that before. It both makes a lot of sense, and simultaneously, it's one of those things where I was like, oh yeah, this is not that interesting, and if at some point I had come across one of those, I probably wouldn't have even suspected it as new. Right? Because like, oh yeah, why why wouldn't they have had those forever? I mean, obviously because no one used them, but like,
yeah,
I wouldn't know how far they future-proofed it. I mean, they probably didn't know how far exactly future-proofed it would be.
Not that much.
But,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the names, but then again, I feel like everything after Giga probably doesn't really have particularly interesting names anyways. Right? I mean, Mega and Giga mean big. Kilo, I don't even think means anything specific except for 1000 because that's just how we use it. And so it's like, after there's like Terra, that just means Earth. Peta, I don't even know if that doesn't mean anything, right? So, Yada, I don't know. Right, so like some of those are already kind of silly, and I think the new ones are just even sillier because we're not used to them. But the fact that we're not used to them is only because they're new. So,
I don't know. Like, I like them. Or I like having them, rather. Because I did run into, like, at least once in a situation where I kind of exceeded Yoda and had, like, 1 million Yoda written down somewhere. I don't remember what it was about, but, like, I do remember being in that situation.
Yeah, so
of Yoda not being enough.
that's what I was saying, right? Like, you might as well have them for the situations where you do want to use them, even if there aren't a lot of situations where you would want to use them. And it would make sense to get to invent those as early as possible. So maybe if I was whomever is responsible for SI units, I might have been like, hey, so once we're already adding like 2 on each side, why not just go further? And, I'm the kind of guy who would have been like, yeah, if we're already at it, might as well add 10. Right? It's like, okay, we're probably going to be good for a while.
Yeah.
Or even better would technically be if you had a system, right? Where maybe they're named after, like how they used to name, on some old paradox tables, they would name the elements, just like, on whatever, and it was just be like, hey, it's like 11, 12, 13, and just 110, 110, 111, 112. They would just like name them rather than actually like by the number rather than actually what they are. And so I think you could have maybe gotten one of those sort of systems, right, where you have like some sort of flattened prefix that like has sort of a built-in way of going, and then especially if it's something where you can just like be like, okay, now that we got to the end, we just loop around again, right? Where it's like, after being deca, it becomes undeca, dodeca, right? It's like, it just can keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily optimal, but I think it does make sense to have like those prefixes figured out to like the infinite degree, but I don't know. This was never meant to be a discussion topic anyways.
Yeah.
My topic's also science. My topic, yeah, exactly. This is also a full topic, no. My fact is also scientific. But I want to ask you, do you want to start with the explanation or with the sort of the fun fact side of it? Because I think I can give a fairly satisfying explanation from both sides.
Probably the fun fact side of things first.
The perfect artificial sweetener is left-handed sugar.
Okay.
So, what do I mean when I say left-handed? Let's start there, right? There's a concept
in like mirrored molecule.
Exactly, right? So there's this concept known as chirality, and that means that effectively left-hand sugar is a mirror of what we consider right-hand sugar, which is the regular sugar that plants produce. Now, chirality means that it's mirrored literally in as far as how the molecule is constructed. So I know to some people that might sound a bit weird because it's in three-dimensional space, but no matter how much you rotate it, it's never going to be exactly mirrored from where it is otherwise, right? So certain things you can do that with, and so those molecules won't have chirality. But molecules where, like, because of like how they connect to certain things, like do have a thing where no matter how much you turn them, they're never an exact mirror. Those will have the chirality, and so the sugar that plants produce we call right-handed, and plants only produce that right-handed sugar. If we tried to make a chemical reaction that produces sugar, which we have, it actually makes both kinds equally, because that's just how chemistry works. Usually, chemistry does not distinguish based on chirality. The things will have the exact same chemical properties. Now, biology does distinguish between chirality because certain molecules won't be able to interact with another molecule unless they have the same chirality. So that comes into play with a lot of enzymes, for example, where, which, by the way, that is the explanation for why it's a good sweetener, because our taste buds still react to left-hand sugar the exact same way as right-hand sugar. But the enzymes that actually break it down and digest it just cannot deal with it. So it just goes through, right? You just shit it right out. Like, your body does not break down left-hand sugar. So that is why it's basically perfect artificial sweetener, because it has like 0 calories, because your body just cannot absorb the calories from it, and it tastes just as sweet as regular sugar. Because it's effectively identical to regular sugar, except for when it's not. Now, you might wonder, A, why can't the body break it down? And B, why do plants only produce the right-handed variety? There we come to a concept known as homochirality. Homo being a prefix meaning same. And so, in nature, all life basically has right-handed enzymes and sugars and all of that sort of stuff, and I believe left-handed DNA. Then it's the same in every single living organism. Because when life first evolved, it had to kind of basically pick a side. And we don't know why it picked that. It might have been by chance. Both developed and then the one kind of became dominant. Because you have to consider how the ecosystem interacts with one another, right? And so it doesn't really make sense to have both versions in one organism, because it would effectively be twice as much work, and you'd have to eat sugar and you have to make sure that the enzymes all match the exact correct sugars, and so it would just be a more tedious process. It would make sense that nature would kind of select for only using one type. And then plants function by making you eat their fruit, for example, to spread the seeds. Not all plants, but the ones that have fruit usually do that because of that reason, or they're sweet because they want to attract insects. And so those interactions only work if the chirality of the plant and the animal are the same, because otherwise the animal that tries to eat the fruit, even if it does still taste just as sweet, will just die, and then will not be, the future generations won't be able to spread it effectively. And so the entire ecosystem, because of how connected it is, all has the exact same chirality, and if new life were to come about that would have a different chirality, it would just die out because it doesn't have an ecosystem to support it. Or if something would evolve to change its chirality. And so all of nature has the exact same chirality. And so because of how plants go about producing sugar, the sugar all has the same chirality because they also use enzymes to make it. And the human body and other animals for that matter, when they break it down, same deal. Only by adding sugar.
Nice.
There's another interesting fun fact that it's kind of related to this. When they were trying to find out if there was life on Mars, they also sent sugar up to Mars to try to see if it would be consumed. But scientists realized, what if life on Mars has the opposite chirality of life on Earth? And so they actually made sugar in the lab so that they would have sugars of both chiralities, just in case. I mean, I think they didn't find any life with that experiment because we don't expect there to be anything alive on Mars. Maybe dormant, but not active. You know how sometimes...
Yeah.
I think they were also recently unfreezing some thousands-year-old Russian viruses from the permafrost.
It'd be doesn't that happen all the time?
Well, yeah. So scientists intentionally did it so that they could study the viruses, because due to global warming, the permafrost is going to probably eventually just release some viruses that were previously trapped in there that were dormant for a while, and they might be dangerous to humans. So they were hey, let's get ahead of this and try to actually explore what those viruses do and how we could neutralize them if need be before they enter the ecosystem. So yeah, that's what I was saying about how there could still be life on Mars, but probably nothing that's actively moving around and trying to live. But there might be frozen life somewhere that could possibly be resuscitated if it is on such a small scale. That has nothing to do with sugar, though. But yeah, no, that's the sugar fact, right? So I could have either started by telling you about homochirality or by telling you about sugar, but either way, same fact.
Nice.
Squirtle, I believe.
Yay. Let's do this.
Okay, let's see. 1 second we had. Let me do this. So we have show dark red keyboard clues, show yellow and red keyboard clues. I believe we have all of these on. We auto hide green, black, and repeated. We do not auto fade white. I believe we're correct now. Let's go to Squirtle. Let's go Wiggly Squirtle and click here. And now we're playing Squirtle.
Ooh.
So yeah, it forgot my settings. I guess we're gonna start as per usual.
Happens.
Without you.
Yes, the classic.
No eyes. Do we want to just try to go for a word that has some of the most common... I think I suggested this before. Some of the most common letters that we haven't yet used. Go for something like storm.
Oh, yeah, sure. let's do it. That sounds really good.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what letters we had, and I think O is the only vowel that we're really missing. I was considering Y, but then I was like, yeah, let's go by the consonants. So I was like S, T, M maybe, and it's like, oh yes, Storm has all those. Okay, well, it looks like we put the O in the wrong spot.
Yeah. Sure, it does look like it.
Although, to be fair, the R's are also bonding at the exact same spot. Okay, no M's, no I's.
Fair.
And we can't have any O's in our current guess.
Mm-hmm. I'd try starting the word with a U. That might...
Ultra. Yeah, that's part of it. We haven't tried L yet, have we? Testing for U in the first row, testing for E in the fourth column, testing for R just more... Well, for R not anywhere where it's pointing, but still could give us positive or negative hints. Testing for L, which is probably the most common letter we haven't tested yet, although I'm not entirely sure what the exact order of commonalities. I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but that's just one that came to mind that starts with U and might have other helpful things.
So as an alternative, I have uncle, which has a lot of those same letters, but places the R with an N, which might be useful. Does happen.
The problem with uncle is that, obviously, I mean, a problem I say, but it's that the E obviously is not pointing at either of the E hints that we have. Although, actually, I was testing for both E hints effectively before. But obviously, this still does give us a lot of information about whether the E hints would go where they might then go. So I think that still works.
It gives us more coverage for the E's.
And arguably, N would be the next letter after L, maybe, that we haven't used it. I'm just guessing, really, but L, N,
like, ideally,
K.
I'd try to incorporate a D somewhere in there, especially in the last 3 spots, but I don't think it matters too much.
Oh, wait, that gets rid of the L again. But under... I mean, what are you more attached to, the L or the D?
I think the D.
You're thinking the D. I think with D, this is probably the best we can do with N and D, as a matter of fact. Yeah, let's just go with it unless you have some objections.
No, let's go for it.
We got the U. We got a lot of E's. I mean, obviously, it almost looks like it might just be the 2 E's right there and there.
Perhaps.
I mean, certainly would be worth trying an E there. No D's there, but D's somewhere. So no D's in the first 3 rows or columns. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually end up having one in the box in the bottom. So do we want to test something that ends on ED, because there's a lot of words that do, and it does test for 2 very convenient things.
Yep, I would. Another interesting thing is that we have like the coverage of the ends. We also excluded a lot of that. So
it's either the very top left letter or also in the bottom. Oh, no,
Or in the other corners.
Or in these that we always tend to forget. So what you're saying is maybe try something like this?
Kinda, yeah. How about noted?
Noted. I do like that. I was just thinking about which vowel to put there, and then... Well, we didn't hit anything, but I think we have a good idea where the D goes. As a matter of fact, I believe this is the only spot that the D can go now.
Yep.
Literally, the only
It
one.
is.
Oh, Jesus. Let's see. Ease. Have to go there, or there,
Or there.
There, or there. Which makes me think words ending in ed, not that uncommon as we talked about. Like, as I mentioned just a couple seconds ago. Okay.
The T's are quite interesting. One of the 3 corners.
Oh, yeah. Well, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, 4 very corners. I was going to say, there are... We already know what the other corner has, but yeah, no, you are right. I was like, this is a D, but you mean there, there, there.
Anything else interesting?
I mean, I do like the initial T, but obviously final T's are certainly possible. Also, what I was going to point out is...
we know where the N is. It's in the last row, right before the D.
N. So this one has to be there. Oh, has to be.
Also, only spot where an N can go on the entire grid.
Oh yeah, true. The only other spot that I could theoretically go from the hints that we have is where we already know the D has to be, so yeah. And then this row still needs to have an R.
So, like, if you want, you can, like, hide the N and D hints. Like, if you want to.
Yeah, I don't think I will.
Because we're kind of done with them.
Yeah.
They're not useful anymore.
Probably just unnecessary work, though. So I'm thinking something like, do you want to try trend? T in the absolute corner.
Yeah,
R
why
needs
not?
To be somewhere in here.
Yeah. I
E
like
needs
that.
To be somewhere in here. It's probably correct. Like, when sometimes I feel like I just got the word? This feels like that. Now, I have been wrong about these sort of things. Probably more often than I've been right, but I do feel very strongly about this. Ooh. Damn! Oh no, wait, we have the D already. Right, as you said.
Yep.
I'm gonna get rid of those two. I'm not gonna get rid of all the white ones, but those ones are just unnecessarily confusing.
Fair enough.
So we know this one needs, well, the R it has, the D it has. Okay. The first column needs an A and an S still. Could obviously be ST at the end. Or S in the center. It cannot possibly be S in the beginning. So it is just those two.
Yep.
So technically middle S works in words like beset, I guess. I'm pretty sure that's a word. Like set, but with B. Reset. Reset is a better word. I don't know why come up with weird words sometimes. Yeah, reset, right? On the other hand, it could end in ST. I mean, obviously, it can't be reset because it can't be E's and it has to have an A, but just in general. It could also end in ST, like in last, fast, mast.
Mm-hmm.
I think AST as an ending is very plausible. As far as I can tell, there's nothing speaking against it either. Obviously, A, S, and T cannot be in the first row, so those guesses will only get us so far, but I think it's still worthwhile to try to go for the words. In favor of the bonus guesses, effectively. If that is what it is, though, then we would still have to figure out how we actually get a 5-letter word that ends with AST rather than all the 4-letter words that I was just saying. I mean, I suppose it always is gassed.
Coast.
Coast. Oh, I like coast. Because we do also need an O in that row. I mean, obviously, it would almost make more sense if the O was here, not there, but then we definitely know for certain where it goes. Coast. Also roast, although it's not necessarily any more useful. But yeah, no. I think
Toast.
What did you say? Ghost?
Toast.
Toast. No, it can't be toast. There can't be a T in the first row.
Why not? Oh, yeah, right.
As a matter of fact, we found the only T.
Yes.
It could be coast. It could be roast. It could be ghost. No, it can't be ghost because it has to have an A. It could be ghast. Out of those, I probably prefer coast because we also haven't tested C's at all. It's not that it is like particularly likely to have a C, but also you might as well find out whether or not we have one. Yeah, I like coast unless you have a better idea.
I do not. So might as well try it.
Well, at least now we know we don't have any C's, and we know for a fact, which, I mean, already seemed fairly likely there was an O there, but now we know this for a fact. On an unrelated note, we need an R somewhere in both the row and the column. Actually, the row and the column both already have one, never mind. We need an S in the row.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, the S has to be there. Because it can't be there.
Yes, yep.
And obviously, that's where the hint is, and there's where the O is. It looks something like loser. Actually, if it's loser, then that one could be blast. I do quite like that.
That could work, yes.
Because I'm not sure if I was gonna say I'm not sure if classed works as a standalone word, but it literally can't be a C, so it doesn't matter, right? Like iconoclast. But I don't know if
it could be poser.
It could be poser, and then what would it be? What kind of past would it be? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't hate poser as an idea. It's just the moment I saw loser, I was like, oh, yeah. This fits in general. So, now I'm trying to figure out if we have any other.
Yeah, no, I think.
Do we have any other unused hints?
Loser is more likely.
Except for like a shit ton of E's, because I think there's at least one more that we have to find on those. But so there or there.
Yep.
And then either there or there. Okay. I mean,
you know what? Let's go for loser. That will give us.
I was trying to see if we could figure
more
out
information.
anything additional. Oh wait, actually, the E's are very useful that we're testing as well. Well, the other E that we're testing is also useful.
Very, very useful.
Because another word is like one letter off from being loser, apparently. Which I guess I was gonna say makes it loner, but it does not because it can't be an N. Loper? Like someone who elopes? I don't know. I'm fairly confident that we can put an E there. Because low ear seems odd to me.
Actually, we don't really have a hint pointing at that.
Oh, actually, no, we do have... Oh, right, because no, you're right. Because we already have both those E's as well. I'm so bad sometimes at seeing the green letters, the ones that are the biggest.
Same.
The whole thing about
I've run into the same thing multiple times.
Okay, but we do need an R.
We do have an A pointing there.
An A pointing there from the top.
The column.
Yes. Okay, there's two spots that A can go into. C is not implausible. AE is not entirely implausible, but seems fairly unlikely, especially since we need a letter that goes in between. So you're saying there makes more sense?
Probably. And the R in the row is unlikely to go into the second place, I think.
Because it would make Lorer...
Unless Lorer is a word.
I mean, Lorer is a word, so it's not that far-fetched, but I wouldn't have heard it, let's put it that way. And then...
Yeah.
Aware and lower. How about that?
That works, yes. I like that.
I could not for the life of me figure out what the column was, but as soon as you gave me the letters for the row, I'm like, W. W fits very well in here. Okay. And then it's usage, I guess, comes to mind as a word that would fit.
Yes.
Do we have any other unused hints at all? I feel like the answer to that is no. Okay.
Could the fourth column be I always forget how to pronounce it, like segue?
No, but the fourth row could be.
Yeah, I'm talking about that.
Yeah, it's a column. I'm just...
Fourth row. Oh, I see.
E-run. I mean, that would work, I guess. R-E-E-D would work. I mean, I'm just... Okay, I do like segue as an answer. The problem then is, what would this letter be to make... What is it, like, be run? Like that, I mean, I don't hate it, it's just, we would then have to figure out what ends in read and what ends in e-run or run. E-run. I mean, it could be a rerun, I suppose, technically. Like a rerun on TV. It does technically work. And then it would have to be something like, well, blurt doesn't quite work, but... Blurb would work. Breed works too.
Mm-hmm.
All of this works.
Right then. Is there any strategy we can do to minimize the amount of guesses?
Well, 3 rows, 5 columns, I think I know what we're going for. Except that we would have to go through the last row anyway. Okay, yeah. We need at least 4 guesses anyways, because it's gonna make us do the last column, even if we already have the last row finished, so I guess 4 is the best we could do.
I think so, yeah. So we go for rows, then.
Yeah, basically, unless, until, segue. Wait, no, it put me in the beginning. I thought it was gonna... Oh! That's smart, actually. It didn't let me do the last column because it knew that the row was the only thing I still needed, I guess. I thought it was gonna make me do the last column because there is still something there, and then was gonna make me do the first one, but no. Blurb. I swear I can type.
Hey. Nice.
Okay, yep. Let me actually wait till it's finished. There we go. We have blurb, loser, aware, segue, trend, blast, lower, usage, rerun, and breed, all of which are words that we're fairly aware of. I wouldn't consider any of these particularly... I mean, I guess segue is a little obscure, especially in how it's spelled, but I don't think it's that out there. So I think this is actually, just in terms of being able to know the words, a very easy one.
Yep.
I think this was generally a fairly easy one because lower and loser also have so many letters in common that if you get one, you basically get the other.
Mm-hmm. It also felt kind of quick.
It did, yeah. I mean, I think part of it is that we didn't debate, like, should we do this word or do we have something better for that long, because I tried to keep us going a little bit. But I guess maybe also because, I was going to say because we had so many black letters, but we actually didn't. I think we had so many white hints. That both...
Lots of white hints.
Inadvertently locked letters in and also simultaneously blocked a lot of possibilities off that we would have maybe otherwise considered pursuing. But yeah, no, that is the answer. I like it. I did quite enjoy this round. Let's, as always, close this out with some random questions. I say always, as most of the time when I have you on very specifically. Let's do open-ended questions. And what completely baseless conspiracy would you like to start?
There's a secret left-handed society. Going off of your fact of the week.
Oh, you mean like chirality-wise, like there's actually... Oh, because I was gonna say, if you say like there's a secret underground society of left-handed people that secretly runs the world, that I think there's actually a strong basis to support that, because, for example, US presidents have been much more left-handed, on average, than US citizens in general have been. So there is actually a statistical reason to assume that left-handed people are, in fact, secretly controlling the world. I believe the explanation...
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But I think one of the explanations for that actually was that in a gesture, left-handed people gesture the same way that you would in front of a mirror, because they're mirrored effectively, and so that is supposed to subconsciously be more sympathetic. I don't know how much of that is true. Yeah, no. I don't know. I mean, first of all, I used to like conspiracy theories a lot more than I do now, because a lot of conspiracies have gained traction with like a lot of the like anti-science crowd and like the flat Earth movement and anti-vax and sort of stuff. And even some of the more fun conspiracy theories, sadly, have inevitably become a bit more harmful because they lead people into a pattern of thinking that leads them into these other more dangerous theories. So yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of certain conspiracy theories in general. And the second thing is, completely baseless is always tricky, because even a lot of the very out there conspiracy theories still have evidence to support it, even if it's not necessarily good evidence, but they usually point at something that makes it seem like it might be true. So depending on how strongly you define the term basis, it also becomes very difficult to actually get it through. I always feel like something like very like small and pedantic would be really funny. Where I can't think of anything particular, but like just like some sort of like embarrassing rumor about a celebrity or something, right? Where it's like it doesn't have any impact on their actual lives, but it would be hilarious if people started believing it, right? I mean, there are some of those already, right? Like the whole like Marilyn Manson had some of his ribs removed so he could blow himself, which isn't true, but apparently for some reason it's a rumor that spread around the entire world and everyone had heard of it at some point. Also, I have to think about that one time when like a picture of Justin Bieber eating like I don't remember what it was, but like some sort of wrap, like by biting into it sideways, was like a big tabloid story for a while, and it later turned out, or actually I've never seen it on YouTube, like this was actually like a staged thing where they like had someone who looked a bit like him, like dressed like him, and then just like intentionally took the picture to like sell to the tabloids. So like that sort of was actually fake, but like that sort of thing, right? Like where it's like something that's like completely harmless and arguably doesn't even like undermine the way people think. Whereas like you don't have to buy into like a big conspiracy theory, but also it would be kind of hilarious. Now optimally that would then I guess target. It could be like something a bit spiteful, but it's like it targets someone that I don't particularly like, and it makes people think something like nasty about them, like not maybe not to a career destroying point because that's a bit cruel as well, but like I don't know.
Yeah. So like my answer before I heard your fact would have been like I don't know, like Finland actually existing.
I'm gonna hear my spread of
conspiracy. I don't have any evidence for that.
I love that where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, if you take the entire world population and you look at the margin of error, and then you subtract Finland and you're still within the margin of error, you realize that Finland does in fact not exist. Yeah, I find that really funny. Here's
same as like Bielefeld. Like
yeah, I literally said that like a couple seconds ago. Okay, here's a fun one. How would you tweak the Olympics to make them even more enjoyable? Even more enjoyable, of course, suggests that they're already enjoyable, which I think is a very subjective question. But I've actually heard a good pitch that I would like to implement.
Cheers.
The athletes for every country just get randomly picked from the population.
Yes.
I've heard that before, and I was like, this is so funny, right? So, like, all of a sudden you get a letter, and they're like, hey, you have to do the 100-meter sprint for well, I guess in your case for Russia. It's like, and you just have to go, and you have to, like, try hard and compete. But, like, you have no professional training whatsoever. It's just, you just try really. I mean, some disciplines you probably couldn't do that because, like, some of them, like, might actually be dangerous, like the whole, like, pole vaulting and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, if you don't know what to do, you might just, like, break your neck when you come down or something. But, like, I still like the idea in general, whereas like as much as it can be safely done to just like actually have not like amateurs in the sense that they don't get paid for it, but like just like actual people that don't have little to no experience in the sport, like just try to compete against each other. Because I might actually watch that.
Yeah, totally. Could also be like on the long term, like kind of representative of the averages. So that's also kind of interesting to see. Yeah.
There's also, I mean, there's a bunch of other things, right? Like, I'm sure some countries would try to cheat the system somehow and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure how realistic this is. Obviously. And again, some sports you just couldn't do for, like, security reasons. But I still think the idea would be hilarious to just, like, have some random people compete in the sport. Like, maybe for, like, some of the team sports, you could, like, draft, like, random local teams instead of, like, random players if you wanted to, or something like that, where it's like, oh, yeah. Like, I mean, even that would be fun. I mean, those would still be people that actually, like, would be more motivated to actually perform well in some way, but I do still think it would be kind of funny where it's like, oh, yeah, like, your, like, local soccer team, like, your town's local soccer team all of a sudden gets selected to perform on an international event where, you know, they didn't even make, like, the 5th highest league last year, but now all of a sudden it's on an international stage. I think there's some fun ideas to be had there. And I mean, there are different ways you could do that, right? You could either be like, they're just picked and then they just have to do it, or you could be like, oh, they get picked and then like a professional trainer gets to train them up for a month and then they perform, right? Like you could do variations on that. I don't know what would be the most entertaining, but it just would be, in general, very interesting. And obviously, you would have to find some way to actually motivate them to do well, because if they're not actually trying, that also makes it unfun again. But I do just kind of like the idea of just some random people just like running a sprint, and like they're all like really slow by like competitive sprinting standards, right? But like that might actually be enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
And then I guess another thing you could do to spice things up is to like loosen a lot of regulations, especially if we already implement the first idea, because a lot of regulations exist so that like, I mean, not like security measures and stuff like that, but like certain ones where it's like, oh yeah, this is to make it fairer, and it's like, oh, if we're already putting a bunch of randos in there, we don't necessarily have to make it fair, right? Like, if they find creative ways to cheat, let them. You know, that's I don't know. I mean, that's something more out there, but
kind of.
I've always liked it. Whenever I first saw like the post where someone had suggested like just letting average people perform in Olympic sports, I think someone had also suggested whenever you have like a professional sports event of that caliber, like at least the singles ones, to like always just have one regular person compete, just to like show how impressive the actual athletes are, which is also I think interesting, although that wouldn't necessarily make me want to watch the Olympics. But like the idea when you have like the 100-meter sprint and like I don't know, like whatever the record is, like 5 seconds or whatever, and then you have like a regular guy who takes like a half a minute just to, like everyone else already like long gone through, and like I think that would also be hilarious because of the contrast, but I do find it even more funny if it's just a bunch of average Joes competing, and like maybe occasionally you get someone who's actually good at it, like because random draw, but I find it fun.
Yeah, it might also like inspire like governments and stuff to invest more in public health. And
that's an interesting point.
that
I hadn't even considered that, but yeah, no, obviously, right? If your population is more athletic in general, then consequently, they might. I wonder if North Korea, given that they already don't have that many citizens, would just be like, okay, you're all getting in shape now. Every single one of you is now a top athlete. We want to impress the world. I mean, bigger countries can't do it, and North Korea doesn't have enough food to do it, so it's probably not that much of a concern. But, you know, I mean, you are right that like maybe some countries would be like, hey, we do very poorly in this international competition. Maybe we should make sure that we do better. I mean, it's one of those arguments for those big sporting events in the first place, right? But it's like, why would you want to host the World Cup or the Olympics, right? Because you put more money to it than you're getting out from tourism and stuff like that. Like, it's just not worth it, usually. But also, they usually build up a lot of infrastructure in the city where it's held, not just in terms of new stadiums, which can be used for future sporting events, but also like making sure that like the public transport and the hotels and everything is like built out to the capacity for like hosting a huge international event, and then a lot of like, again, improving roads and stuff like that just will be used for a long period thereafter. So there's also some interesting arguments there for why, besides just like looking good on the world stage, it actually makes sense to host some of those things occasionally to like as a sort of excuse to invest in infrastructure. So we could also be like, hey, you know, now we're gonna try to fix obesity because we don't want to look bad in the Olympics.
Yep.
How did the most pivotal moments of your childhood change you?
That assumes that I know the most pivotal moments in my childhood.
I was just thinking that. I don't know. I wouldn't even be able to tell you individual moments that were particularly impactful on either me as a person or the trajectory of my life. I mean, I guess if it impacts me as a person, it would also impact my trajectory because, you know, I'm a human being with agency. But I can't.
Where are you?
Yes, I know the universe is predetermined, but at least I feel like I have agency. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I can't think of anything in particular. I mean, I guess
Me neither.
one thing that like sort of is impactful is just the schooling aspect of it, where, we got ratings for which schools we could attend, and normally those are non-binding, but for a couple of years they were trying making them binding, so in theory, if I had gotten a shit evaluation, I could not have gone to as good of a school as I had, and that would have been impactful. But also, obviously the evaluation is based on how good you were in school, which is in turn, at least indirectly, based on how intelligent you are, blah, blah, blah. So it's there is not a realistic world where only one thing would have changed and I gotten a worse rating. Especially because you could have gotten the unconditional and the maybe sort of ratings, and I got the best one. So it's not any one thing before that would have changed that. So that one situation also shouldn't have gone differently on a whim normally. So it's not like that would have really changed much. And even then, there would have still technically been a second track where I say they were binding, but technically they weren't. It's just that you had to do an entrance exam if you didn't get the recommendation. So if you want to go to the best type school, you didn't have a recommendation, you had to do an entrance exam. I know at least one person that went to my school that did that, so it's doable as well.
Honestly, it doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah. Honestly, the recommendation system is interesting because they once again went away from making it mandatory a couple of years later. I think they literally just did it for a couple of years. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because on the one hand, the idea of it makes sense. On the other hand, you obviously, because they're just made by teachers, you play the biases as well a little bit. And also, it's really harsh to judge kids when they're 10 years old, how successful they may or may not be in academics, right? So it's I don't know, right? Some kids just take a while until they really adapt to those systems. So
your prefrontal cortex barely exists at that point.
It's weird. Also, there's another experiment that they did around the time when I was in school, which is having one less year of school, by just condensing a lot of other stuff. But it's kind of funny because they went back on it later because apparently it was too stressful, which is funny because I always found school to be terribly boring.
This is so fucking slow. It's unbearable.
I mean, effectively, what you did in 6 years, we then did in 5, right? So it's not.
Yeah.
But it still felt slow. And this isn't the topic, but we have to fix the school system. I really liked learning new things before I went to school. And I really, once again, started enjoying learning new things a couple of years after I got out of school. The period where I probably least enjoyed learning things was while I was in school. And,
yep.
I mean, sure, I'm sure part of that has to do with, being a teenager during a large part of it, and teenagers kind of necessarily being resistant to a lot of things that come towards them. There's that thing, the whole teenage rebellion thing. I mean, I was never, that rebellious in, out of the stereotypical sense, but I do think a little bit of that, where it's oh yeah, the institution wants you to learn this, hence this is the least interesting thing in the world to learn right now. But I think it also, in part, has to do with, how it's presented, and, how it's structured, and so
yeah.
I swear to God, it is possible to make a school system where the students, maybe not all of them, but, at least significantly more, actually want to learn, and more students succeed. And I think our school system is in some ways fundamentally broken, and needs to be fixed.
Yep.
I even have some solutions, but probably not enough to actually fix the system. I don't have some idea. Well, I guess there aren't solutions and if that'll fix the system, but they're improvements, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's enough for today. I was thinking about going to the next question, but I think we did the thing. Unless you wanted to say something more about schools.
Sounds good to me.
Always like to talk about schools. I think it's written out as a topic too. Right?
No. We still have
redesigning the entire school system. There it is. So yeah, we have to do that at some point.
Yep.
Man. I have so much to say.
I know, same, but I don't want to make it on assumptions. But there's so much to research about it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's that thing where, like, I have a lot of improvements that I can suggest, right? And most of them will probably work. But also, it would be better to have it backed up by data.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst part is, I feel like the more time goes by, the more things I learn about that could be improved, right? Like, for example, academic writing. Like, I just learned about, like, I mean, the fact that academic writing usually sucks is, like, something that I kind of knew for a while, but I now know it sort of much more, like, I know much more basis on why that is, and, like, how that is, and, you know.
And that also kind of... That's, like, at least part the reason why I'm so bad at writing. Why I oftentimes fail to even start writing stuff.
I don't know how much that's specific, but, like, it's like, I can't believe that school taught us to write in a way that is counterproductive to how you're supposed to write when you're an adult, right? It's like, oh, right, you're demonstrating, the whole demonstrating knowledge versus, like, actually, like, being interesting. I mean, it's not being interesting just, but, like...
Yeah.
We were never taught
demonstrating knowledge versus communicating.
Yeah, we were never even taught that target audiences are a thing in school. I'm pretty sure. I want to say. It's like...
I don't think so.
We did both creative writing and, well, we didn't really do academic writing in, like, quite the sense that you would, like, but still, right? We did effectively both, and never were we told, like, oh yeah, think about who you're writing this for. It's like, that seems like a very fundamental question to ask when you're writing something.
Yeah. And I never got past that question. Because I did ask myself that question, but, like, I never knew, like, how to change my writing based on who I'm writing it for.
Yeah, but I mean, again, the first step is just knowing who you're writing.
Also, I didn't know how to, like, actually ask that question. Like, I kind of subconsciously understood it, but, like, not, like, explicitly.
Yeah. There's so many things, right, that I think school should teach in general, like, content-wise. And then also just, I think a lot of these strategies for teaching are bad. And testing is bad. And homework is bad. Like...
Grading itself is kind of also not that good.
Yeah, I mean... I think grading is useful as a tool for measuring
it is useful.
Progress, but not in the way that it's used. And it's also one of those things where doing poorly should not be something to be ashamed of, because doing poorly tells you that this is an area where you can improve, or where you should maybe improve, rather than telling you that you suck at it, right? So I think there's a lot of attitudinal stuff that can be done, but this is definitely not the topic right now. I like waxing poetically about this, but again, this should be a dedicated topic. And honestly, even without bringing stats, I think I could probably fill a topic with this, but obviously it would be better to have some scientific backup.
At least something to back it up. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that at least some of the stuff that I wrote down, I know that when I first heard about, like, for example, that grading doesn't work and that homework doesn't work, like, those were still based on actual research. So, like, actual, like, scientific papers and stuff like that. So, I'm not pulling that out of my ass, although certainly personal experience would say that, yeah, no, that checks out. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode of the Trash Talk Podcast, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more like this, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. Oh, no, wait, we're doing songs. That's the songs of the week, Sergej.
Right. Almost forgot about it myself. My song of the week is Unwelcome School, How Fitting, by Mitsukiyo.
At very first, I got, like, sort of circus or, like, comedy chase scene sort of vibes from it. I don't know. Is this purely instrumental, or is this just the segment?
It's purely instrumental.
I mean, that certainly is always something I have difficulty with. I mean, I do think I have one or two purely instrumental songs in my collection of 1,000 songs, so not really my preferred type of music in general, but
yeah. As far as I know, Blue Archive, where this is from, is, I think, a game. I'm not entirely sure, and so it would make sense that there's no lyrics. It's probably meant as a background thing.
Again, at the very beginning, the bit, it sounded almost like they were doing a Scooby-Doo hallway chase scene, when they're going in and out of the walls.
Yeah.
That kind of vibe. I don't know if they even use that kind of music in Scooby-Doo itself, but that stereotype in general, where haha, funny chase scene. Somehow I had to think of that, but yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. Anything else you want to say about this one?
Not really, no.
So, I once again did the thing where I was like, what could I use as a song of the week? And then I was like, what is our topic? And then I thought about it. And I was like, do I have anything about art? Not really. But I do have something about, well, not AI, strictly speaking. But my song of the week is Cyberchrist by Pivot.
I don't like it.
So what is it? You do or you don't like it?
I do like it, yeah.
Okay. It's
pretty nice.
Sometimes when you don't speak very clearly, that sounds almost the same.
Yeah.
I figured AI, Cyberchrist, huh?
I have expected you to give me a song that was generated by an AI, because that's also a thing.
I had very briefly considered looking into that, but I was like, yeah, no, let's just go simple with it, especially because I came up with this very last minute, so I didn't have a lot of time to get fancy with it. But yeah, so this is.
I see.
But yeah, no, I think I really like the song. I think I might have used it as song of the week way back when, but I didn't have the edited sound file, so not since we had song of the week clips, not even just since we had live clips like that we're reacting to, but actually since we inserted clips. So it's been a while. If I ever used it before, and
yeah,
I also found out that I think this song is not very well known. So I tried looking into it, right? And first of all, there are actually quite a few songs called Cyberchrist that, as far as I can tell, are all distinct songs, which is interesting. And this is the fifth one that comes up or something, so it doesn't seem to be all that well known, I think. I think I only know it because Alex showed it to me, so I don't know how he found that one. But yeah, no, so I thought this was kind of...
It's a nice song.
In a way, the quintessential song of the week, where not only is it fitting I had a lot of recent songs, but also it might genuinely be an underrated song, as opposed to a lot of other songs that I had where it's
adding it to my playlist right now.
Yeah, no, because I've had other songs where it's oh yeah, this is a fairly well-known song, and so I still like sharing those, but I think this one might actually do something. With that being said, the thing I was about to say before about liking, commenting, and subscribing, also the link to the Discord server is in the description below. Sergej!
That's it.
That's it.